Welcome to the platform. Conrad and Tom here. So we're rolling. Last recording was the 10th one. This is our 11th. And last time we talked a little bit about subconscious programming. And then we talked about a few other things. And so today we're just going to talk maybe a little bit about that and then talk a little bit about the 7 and also 12 Hermetic principles under which the universe works on. Now, Tom has 12 of them. We got a book here, The Kabbalion, which talks about 7 of them. And it'd be fun. It's going to be fun to talk about these to see actually what's added, because originally these 7 are the ones that I know of through this book and through a few other sources. And you said that you originally got the 14 from anything prior to that video. Did you know about any of the principles prior to the video?
No.
Okay, so we're going to talk about those and have some fun with it and see which ones apply. And it's going to be great to hear these other ones. Now, I know you mentioned that there was the law of compensation, but the one that really resonated with me that isn't in this Kabbalion is the law of germination, which I think is absolutely necessary. So,
now, say that again. Did you say that the law of germination was in mine and not yours?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's recap real quick. I think we've been talking a lot about programming the subconscious mind. And even though that is a very useful, what would you call it?
Skill to master.
Useful skill, a tool, a thing that you can do, you can apply it. Although it is very useful and it's real, it's not everything. It's just a thing. It's one truth.
Yeah. Real quick, just before we dive in. So, how have you been doing with subconscious reprogramming?
So subconscious programming for me it's very easy to do the envisioning, the writing down, the believing, the feeling of feeling that it's already a truth. You know, I could just whatever. I could envision myself doing something, being somewhere. I can picture myself already being in possession of the things that I desire, and that's all great. Now, the thing is, I do know with subconscious programming, okay, so the envisioning stuff, that's one thing. That's wanting something. But I think for me, more importantly, it's reprogramming changing the thoughts that you repetitively tell yourself throughout the day. So for me, it's being aware of. It's about going about your day and then having a thought and then being aware of that and say, that's an old thought. I need to be aware of that and now think differently. And so the more you do that, the more your old thoughts get pushed out. But the thing is, every now and then they do come back.
Yeah.
I actually had the last couple of days feeling like that. Mm-hmm. I got very worldly, and one thing that I realized, maybe not at that moment, but afterwards, I realized what happened was all those past thoughts consumed me again. Mm-hmm. I just became them, and I was like, man, why do I feel so bad? I feel like I'm in the past.
Yeah.
And it was because I was back on that train of thought. Those probably thousands of different thoughts you have, you kind of just go back to the way you are. And it's kind of funny. You ever have that feeling? Everybody has that feeling where they may not hang out with somebody for a while, maybe even years, and then they come back you see the person again, and then you kind of behave the same way you did, even though that you're not that person anymore, but because of just energy and falling back into old behavior patterns, you go through that experience. So that's been my experience with the subconscious programming. And then I'll just quickly add that I do, and this is going to be a great principle to talk about, is the law of germination. How once you envision, put the feeling behind it, well, now you got to put the action towards that direction. Not only once you put the action in, then you have to be patient and let the results manifest. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't happen overnight. It could take weeks, months, years. And so that's why I love the law of germination, because I used to have a huge problem with patience for letting things manifest. Mm-hmm. I'm a real good at starting things. I'm really good at starting things. But then there's that process where you just have to wait and let things germinate naturally. Yeah. You can do it as much as you physically can, but then you just have to let the universe work on it. Yeah. Okay, so you asked me, how about you? Have you been doing it? Yeah. And what are the effects? Yeah. Share.
Okay, so and I asked you because I have recently, the last 2 days, actually more so, actually just today was the worst.
Worst isn't good or bad?
Bad. Like today's something like really was, for lack of a better word, attacking me, like really bringing me down. It's bizarre, because when you're feeling some way, like in a good way, Connor and I were talking the other night about everything kind of being on a pendulum, and swinging one way in the good and then one way in the bad, and kind of having these ebbs and flows, good and bad. And I've been, on a high, like on a really good incline, a steady one, nothing crazy. And today, I woke up, I like last night, actually started last night, and I could feel it coming on. I don't know how, like, I can't really articulate it, but I could just sense that something was, some negativity was creeping in. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a list of things that I'm going to do tomorrow morning. And I was like, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and before I cook the kids breakfast, I'm going to work out. I'm going to do, I'm trying to do these push-ups and crunches and this workout, this 15-minute workout. Then after that, I'm going to make the kids breakfast. And then after that, I'm going to study and meditate before my little kids get up. And sure enough, man, this morning, none of that happened. I mean, not a single thing. And I was like, man, what is going on? And so the whole day I had to consciously fight this opposition. Yeah. And really, what I think it is, and this is what I actually came to the conclusion of, is, and this is what I really wanted to get at, is that my subconscious, my old subconscious, is not happy with this reprogramming. It's like, and all these neuroscientists and people that are studying epigenetics and this, they say that it's not easy, and that some of them referred to mythology and Nietzsche and Darwin, and they talked about how, like, when you get to this place where you're trying to change and you recognize it and you're aware of it, that you basically are fighting a dragon, is what they refer to, like this mythological dragon or whatever. And they're like, plays and stories and mythology, all this stuff revolves around this idea of conquering and fighting this dragon, but he keeps coming up, as you keep getting deeper and deeper, and people don't want to fight that dragon, and so they never face it. And so But anyway, whether that, resonates with anybody or not is beside the point. The point is that today, now, it's like 10 o'clock. I feel really good. And it's amazing that I feel good because I could look back at the day and say, oh my gosh, I got conquered today.
Yeah.
But I actually prevailed. My consciousness actually won out. And instead of just throwing up my hands and going back to old ways and old habits, I just stayed the course.
Yeah.
And I listened to, beta vibrations and meditation music as I was driving, and reinforcements, and consciously I made choices that I didn't want to make, and I was just like, man, it's amazing to see that my subconscious is like, no, Tom, this isn't you.
Yeah.
Like this, you normally, do this, and why are you doing this? And I feel like, I could be making this all up in my mind, but I feel like that is the battle. Like that, the saying, it's darkest right before the dawn.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and I said this, I think even last week, like I feel like breakthrough is right around the corner. I feel like, because I want to work out every day. I want to eat healthier. I want to be more productive. I want to be better in a lot of arenas in my life. And so there are very tangible things that I can do to make that happen that I'm not doing. Writing things out, making a list. I bought a calendar like a month ago and, put it into place for like a week. And it's like, man, why? Seriously, I know that having a calendar and writing things out and projecting my future on a day-to-day basis is beneficial. But why can't I do it?
Yeah.
Why don't I do it? And it's my subconscious, and that's what we're talking about, like subconscious reprogramming and telling yourself that you can do it. It can be done. And then little by little, it gets easier. And it's amazing because the reason that I was victorious today is because I filled myself with positive things despite how I felt.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done that a month or 2 months or 3 months ago.
Because you'd linger in that negative space, like, I can't do it, I suck, whatever, all negative affirmations, and then you linger in that space. And the longer you linger in that space, then it starts coming to you.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you invited me over to do this recording at like 8 o'clock, and I didn't want to do it. I mean, I physically didn't want to do it. I was like, you know what? We were doing paper mache. Me and my little kids, we were doing paper mache, and I was like, this is gonna take a while to clean up, and blah blah blah. That's why it was so long to text you back.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I know that I'm gonna get jacked up by going over there and recording. And sure enough, I'm here, and I'm in a really good state of mind, like positive, got a lot of energy. I snorted a little Coke before I, but but I'm feeling real good. And so anyway, my whole point is this, like I said a lot to say this, that change comes with opposition, man. And
it does.
And you gotta fight it. You gotta conquer it. It can be conquered and mastered. But man, we're talking about life change here. Real life change. And that requires a lot of fight and intensity and drive and motivation. And so, to have a support group, to have actual, practical things that you can apply in your life on a day-to-day basis. And when you're not feeling it, just go to those things and move on, just keep on going, just keep moving.
And the beauty thing about once you start doing it, or once I've noticed this about myself, especially yesterday and today, that once you start going down the path of wanting to change, your subconscious mind, change your life, redirect, change course. Once you start doing it and you have those good days where you're on that positive path and you can feel, you start seeing the changes, you feel the changes. The good thing is that what I noticed, that when you do go back to the old ways of thinking, it's actually it doesn't feel good. It feels, even though you're going back to ways of thinking that in the past you would have lived in for a very long time. I mean, that was you.
Yep.
It wasn't something that you thought about. That was just your being. And once you start thinking about that, or once you get into a point where you kind of go back to that momentarily, it doesn't feel good. It makes you feel like blah.
Yeah.
And so then it's great because it's a feedback mechanism saying, hey, something's not right here. And so you're so aware of it. So it's like, okay, great. The terrible thing would be to not be aware.
Yep.
Be like, this is just normal. This is just me. I'm just me now. It's like, no, you're going back to old pathways. And so the negative response that you're getting is actually a positive feedback.
I had that exact thought today. Literally that exact thought. I was like, I am so excited that I'm feeling this way because I can tell I'm in combat.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm recognizing that I'm trying to do good and I'm trying to change, and that the negative's back, coming back, as opposed to I'm in the negative and, seeing, like, trying to think of what the positive is like.
Right.
No, I'm in the positive, and now I'm seeing what the negative is like.
Yes, it's a good evidence that it's
Yes,
on the right path.
exactly.
Yeah. So what I think would be great is to talk about so we cover the subconscious program, I think, and I'm sure we're going to constantly talk about that. But what I would like to really talk about and start to get into are these principles. And these are laws that there are immutable laws. They are the laws that govern the universe to the extent that we know the universe, because the universe we can get into multi-dimensions and we can get into God's realm. Now, this is primarily concerning the world that we all live in now. We're humans on Earth. We live in Earth is in a what's that called? Why can't I think of it? The solar system. We're in a solar system, galaxy, many galaxies, space, all that. But that is the observable universe, and I believe these laws also apply to the quantum world. So, I mean, look, man, I can't wait till you start getting into this, because this is a fantastic little piece of literature. I'm holding the Kybalion by the Three Initiates, and this is essentially just a text that was written by an Egyptian. I don't think it was a pharaoh. Somebody from ancient Egypt, and they're essentially laws that were written down that have existed for eternity, or for since the beginning of the creation, and these are the immutable laws. And so I know Tom had a video where he came across 14 of them.
Yeah, why don't you read your 7 and I'll read my 14.
I'll read the 7, and then you said you have 12 now?
Yeah.
What'd you do with the other 2?
Well, just the website that I'm looking at only had 12.
Okay. So
The other 2 were mutable.
the immutable the immutable laws, I'll just list them off, then I'll kind of give a quick little definition. So we have the principle of mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. So according to the Kybalion and these immutable Hermetic principles, Mentalism says that all is spirit. So everything in the universe is a spirit. It's a mental creation. It's all mental. Correspondence. Correspondence is the principle that says, as above, so below. Everything that is on earth and in heaven and in the quantum world is all the same, pretty much. So we can look at inside a microscope, and really the same thing that's going on in the quantum world, the micro world, is also happening in the macro world. It's really the same. And so that's correspondence, as above, so below. The law of vibration, nothing at rest, nothing on all planes is at rest. Everything is in constant motion. Everything is always vibrating. The principle of polarity. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. So think of like a thermometer. You have cold on one end and heat on the other. They're hot and cold. They're identical. They're different in degree, but identical in nature. So think of temperature. So that's a law. The law of rhythm. Rhythm compensates. Everything has its tides. Yes, rhythm. So like tide goes in, tide goes out. We have rhythms in our lives, rhythms in our thoughts. So everything, there's a principle of a rhythm, principle of cause and effect. Chance is at a. Oh, this is a great cause and effect. Every effect has its cause. Every cause has its effect. And I love this little saying here. Chance is a law. Chance is but a name for a law not recognized.
What?
Chance is but a name for a law not recognized. I like that. So when we think, chance, like that just happened by chance. Mm-hmm. No, there was a law behind that.
Yeah,
it's just that.
No coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that it's just not recognized. Somebody's like, oh, it's just by chance. Oh, hey, that's luck. It's like there's no such thing. There's no such thing as that. So the law of gender, the principle of gender, on all planes, physical and spiritual, everything has its feminine and masculine. So those are the 7. What are the ones that you have?
Okay, so the law of divine oneness. Everything is connected to everything else. What we think, say, do, and believe will have a corresponding effect on others and the universe around us. Law of vibration. Everything in the universe moves, vibrates, and travels in circular patterns. The same principles of vibration in the physical world apply to our thoughts, feelings, and desires, and wills in the etheric world. Each sound, thing, and even thought has its own vibration frequency, unique into itself. The law of action must be employed in order for us to manifest things on earth. We must engage in actions that support our thoughts, dreams, emotions, and words.
So I would connect that to cause and effect.
Yeah. So law of correspondence. The universal law states that principles or laws of physics that explain the physical world, energy, light, vibration, and motion have their corresponding principles in the etheric or universe, as above, so below. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I heard, one way I heard it articulated is, if you live in chaos inside, if you're stressed and hectic and chaotic on the inside, then the outside world will be that as well.
Yeah, so true.
Law of cause and effect. Nothing happens by chance or outside the universe laws. Every action, including thought, has a reaction or consequence. We reap what we sow. Law of compensation. The universal law is the law of cause and effect applied to blessings and abundance that are provided for us. The visible effects of our deeds are given to us in gifts, money, inheritances, friendships, and blessings. Law of attraction. This demonstrates how we create the things, events, and people that come into our lives. Our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions produce energies which in turn attract like energies. Negative energies attract negative energies, and positive energies attract positive energies. The law of perpetual transmutation of energy. All persons have within them the power to change the conditions of their lives. Higher vibrations consume and transform lower ones. Thus, each of us can change the energies in our lives by understanding the universal laws and applying the principles in such a way as to effect change. Law of relativity. Each person will receive as a series of problems for the purpose of strengthening the light within. Each of these lessons and tests to be a challenge and remain connected to our hearts when proceeding to solve the problems. This law also teaches us to compare our problems to others' problems into its proper perspective. So no matter how bad we perceive our situation to be, there is always someone who is in a worse position. It's all relative. The law of polarity. Everything is on a continuum and has an opposite. We can suppress and transform undesirable thoughts by concentrating on the opposite pole. It is the law of mental vibrations. Law of rhythm. Everything vibrates and moves in certain rhythms, or to certain rhythms. These rhythms establish seasons, cycles, stages of development, and patterns. Each cycle reflects the regularity of God's universe. Masters know how to rise above negative parts of a cycle by never getting too excited or allowing negative things to penetrate their consciousness. And
I really like that one. That one's great. The fact about not getting too excited. It's like almost falls in line with like stoicism. What was that one again?
Law of rhythm.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the law of gender, as you said. The law of gender manifests in all things as masculine and feminine. It's the law that governs what we know as creation. The law of gender manifests in the animal kingdom as sex. This law decrees everything in nature is both male and female. Both are required for life to exist.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I feel like a couple of those were kind of like a spin-off of some of the originals. Only like a couple though, but did you have the law of germination? Did you talk about that?
That was in the
video. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another law, but so mentalism, all is spirit. Look, I feel like that just is extremely true. Nails it on the head. All is spirit. All is mental. The world was created first through a form that is not of material. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and if you can think about that in a way, like look at everything around right now. We have just all this stuff here. This once existed in somebody's mind. It was a mental thing first. The design of like a couch or the idea of a computer. So it all existed in mental. It was mental first. And so let's see, a mental creations of the all. So that to me is fascinating. And so you have to ask yourself, what that makes me think is, look, we can pinpoint things. You can pinpoint material things. You can pinpoint Earth. You can pinpoint our solar system. But where do you pinpoint mentalism? You can just say, oh, it's in that person's brain. But that, I believe, is just such an acute place you can point at. But I think mentalism exists somewhere that is not that is not measurable in the universe. Maybe just a piece of it, but not the core source of mentalism. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
What are your thoughts on mentalism?
Well, so I mean, I don't even know what that really means, mentalism. But to talk about things that I do know in terms that I know. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the law that I mentioned, divine oneness, that's the same law that you're talking about, right? So let me read it again. Divine oneness, everything is connected by everything else. What we think, say, do, and believe will have a corresponding effect on others and the universe around us. So I think that applies, but also in that video that I was watching, the law of oneness or divine oneness, it talked about this idea that we're all energy, that everything is made up of energy.
Yeah.
And that because of that, everything is made up of energy, that we are all connected, whether we know it or not. And that really resonates with me on a deeper level because of my Christian biblical worldview and how God created everything and its origin, being God and oneness. And we might get on a tangent here, but I think it's worth it. But and this ties into cause and effect too. But think about this. So even before we were on this journey, I always pondered the reality of cause and effect. So, I've always wondered what my effects have on the world around me that I don't even know. For example, this was in California that I thought about this. So, 10 years ago or so. And I don't remember exactly how I articulated it in my mind, but so imagine that I go into a store and I buy the last blank item. Okay? So
Hershey's chocolate bar.
Yeah, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And because I buy that item, a person after me comes in and they really want it. Mm-hmm. And because it's not there, it causes them to do something. And because of their actions, it causes another person to do something. And you just you keep going down that rabbit hole.
The butterfly effect.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. How far does that go? And how far does our own personal actions?
Yeah, because if you think about it, that cause could have a ripple effect for all eternity.
Yeah.
Or until God decides the world's over. But yeah, think about it, because you can play that out forever.
Yeah.
You can
with every action that you do.
With every action that you do.
Action that you do.
And think about it, with every action that everybody does on a constant basis, it's a constant. Everything is always changing, and you wonder where does it end? But so where'd you take that thought? Back when you were thinking about it?
Well, I was just thinking how my actions have an effect on those around me, whether I believe it or not. And it helped me to value making better choices.
Yeah. So that right there is, okay, that's a very physical thing. If I go to a store and I park in a parking spot that's up front and somebody went to go find that spot, they didn't find it, but instead they had to park over there.
Or they hit your car.
Or they hit my car. So that's like physicality, and you wonder how badly did that change the course of humanity, just like a simple thing like that. So that's actually interesting, because you wonder how powerful the effect is. Now it's like I could go to this. I could be a extremely angry person. I walk in and I say, "Man, I'm gonna just get this item because this is what I need right now. Otherwise, if I just don't feel a little bit of ease, I'm gonna just shoot up a building somewhere." Yeah. I walk in, the item's not there. That's it. That set me off. I go shoot up a building. Now, here's the thing. The interesting thing is, see, the universe is mental. So when that person decided to shoot up a building because they didn't find that last bar that you took, is it you that caused that effect, or was it the effect? Was it the person holding the idea of their mind that they were already telling themselves that they were going to go do this terrible thing because of this thing? So where is it stronger, in your cause, or them letting that idea stir in their mind?
Well, that's it. I mean, I think the obvious answer is it's their cause. Like, for example, we're never justified in our actions for doing something wrong or immoral, even if we were, like, for example, if you walk in on your spouse, sleeping around with somebody else, you're not excused if you take another person's life, right? You can't blame your spouse and say, well, hey, if you hadn't done this and put me in this position, I wouldn't have done that. Like, we are responsible for our own actions. And
That's right, yeah.
and you think about, like, so a lot of what we're learning, at least through the studies that I'm doing, is this idea that we are not justified by playing the victim.
Yes.
We are not.
Absolutely.
And that really has a lot more problematic realities than you would think on the surface. For example, did the kid that got molested as a child, abused, and just, I mean, you name it. I mean, he was a victim of his upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And he does something terrible, shoots up a school, bombs a building, whatever.
Goes on to molest others.
Yeah. And then you say, like, you have to really think, like, okay, I mean, any person in the right mind would not choose to do these things.
Yeah.
And so is it his fault?
Right.
And I just, watched the Ted Bundy tapes, and man, what a maniac, but,
yeah.
but, even psychology today can't figure that out.
Yeah.
And with him specifically, just because of his demeanor and his character outside of, what he did. So I don't think that we're ever excused for doing things that are immoral or wrong, even if we're pushed in that corner to react.
Right.
But I will tell you that what we're talking about, it affects every part and aspect of your life. Because here's the thing, you're talking about physicality, you're talking about physical things, but here's the thing, you may be sitting at home doing something, whether it's mental, like you might be thinking bad thoughts, or you might be looking at things on the internet that you shouldn't look at. You might be doing something that you think has no effect on anyone else outside of you because you're behind closed doors, etc. But what you don't realize is what you're doing affects you. Yeah. And then because of that, affects others, whether in that moment or not. And, I just think about it as I have children. If I don't do things that are healthy for me mentally and whatever, then I can find myself being short with my children. And then it affects them in that way. And it starts with my thoughts, and if they consume me, my negative ones and whatnot, and it manifests in the physical world by my actions. Yeah. So the mental has a part in the physical, so.
See, man, this is so good, because this ties directly into when Jesus says, look, don't you gotta maybe help me with this. What he says, don't
with adultery?
Yeah, don't be an adulterer, or don't do sexual things with another woman before marriage, or I'm butchering this, but what I'm trying to get to is where he says, but verily I say to you that even if you think it, then you've already committed adultery.
Yeah, he said, it was, you've heard it said that he who commits adultery on his life is guilty of the punishment. But I tell you, he who even commits adultery in his mind is guilty of the punishment. Yes. And even further to that point, he goes on to say that you've heard it said that he who commits murder is guilty for the punishment. But I tell you that if you even hate your brother or say that you hate him, you've committed murder in your heart.
So is he not talking about the law of vibration? Is he not talking about these laws? See, this stuff is this right here is just these 7. I'm pointing at the 7 laws right here, and there's more of them, but this right here is just a way for us to understand with our current thinking and our current language. But this existed. This is God's creation. This is way before any of us even developed language. This was already always. And so I think it's fantastic because I started telling myself, man, don't think you can find refuge in your own mind. So when you're with somebody, when you have, you can even be like sitting right next to somebody, and you can have, or better yet, when you go into a little public place, and then you have your little judgments that you're passing out. You have your little thoughts, your judgments, and if you tell yourself these things, then don't think that just because you didn't say them that the effect isn't taking place. The effect's taking place on you.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that is why when Jesus said, do not judge, because for whatever measures you use to judge, the same measures will be used to judge against you. Yeah. And when you first hear that, you think, oh, so if I do something to somebody, eventually somebody's going to do it to me. It's like that too. But when you do that, you already just did it to yourself, like that.
Well, so something that I think is important to say as a side note. So for so long, I mean, let's just put it this way. So many people, myself including, prior to accepting Christ, think that God is this mean dad with a bunch of rules so that his children don't have fun. And the thing is, God is a loving father who's sitting there and telling us, hey, guys, don't put your hand on the stove. It's hot. Right. You know, like you think about premarital sex, right? God's like, don't have sex before marriage. And we're sitting there like, why? That doesn't make any sense, right? And then you look at the effects of it, and half of them we can't even see. We don't even realize that they, what they do. And God's like, guys, I'm not giving you these laws for me. I'm giving them to help you. Like, man, this is like, I'm trying to help you guys live the best lives you can, and you think I'm restricting you, but I'm giving you freedom. Yeah. Like, I want you to be free of the effects of these things, because once they take stronghold on you, then it's too late. Yes. And like in the Bible, it talks about, in my opinion, one of the worst things God can do to a person is not care and give him over to the lawlessness of his heart. When he stops convicting you and he stops telling you, hey man, you shouldn't be on that path. And he just says, okay, go do it. Yeah. Man, that's when it's like one of those things where you've heard it said, the worst punishment you can give your child is, just to be disappointed, not punish them at all, and I just listened to a guy, Jordan Peterson. He said the most profound thing. He said, don't ever punish your child. Don't ever punish them for doing something bad, because they want to be punished. And then they'll crave that punishment as they'll be expecting it, And he's like, instead reward them for good behavior, And he was talking about this idea of how, like, I'll just give you an example. Like, last summer, I let a employee drive my vehicle, and he wrecked it pretty bad. And it was a real bad situation. He didn't have a license. And so he felt so guilty. He was like, it ate him alive, because he did this thing, and it didn't bother me at all. I mean, I couldn't have cared less about it, and it showed. And like I was like, dude, don't worry about it. And this went on for weeks and months and longer. And it's interesting because he grew up in that lifestyle where he thought he deserved a punishment for it, and it just ate him up. That I wasn't angry, I wasn't upset, and it really got to him. You know, he was like, man, I'm deserving of some punishment. And it's so interesting because you know, me and that, yeah. So anyway, that's a different story. But it's interesting how, like, when we get punished for something we do, we then feel like that we got what we deserved, and that fills a void in our hearts or whatever. But when we don't get that punishment, we feel this emptiness, like, man, I deserve to be punished for that, and I'm not. Something's wrong. And so anyway, it's just interesting that I forget how we got onto that, but
that's interesting, because if you think about it, it's almost as if breaking rules, breaking the law, there's a specified penalty for it. So, for example, you're driving, you park your car in a meter, and you know, hey man, if I just don't pay the meter, I'm just going to get a $15 ticket. I can afford that penalty. And so if we have these set penalties for the wrongs that we do, then we can kind of overcome them because we know the extent of what the penalty is. But man, that's scary when there is no penalty, because then you're driving around. I mean, forget the car idea, but when you live a life of just being a wrongdoer towards others and to yourself, then there's no immediate penalty, and then you might even think there's not one, but then it comes to you later. And that's the worst. But man, that's interesting, because it's almost as if like when things eat away at your conscience, there's almost like I mean, it's God's law, like you're going to reap what you sow. So you mentioned that Jordan Peterson. Oh, where is this? I'm going to flip 5 more pages. If I don't find it, I just won't find it. But there is a thing where it's what you just said. It's when not totalitarian, but that's my bit right here. Oh, yes, sirree, Bob. Okay, do you remember specifically the quote where he says, the one where he talks about...
Yeah.
Oh, I'm at the end.
Yeah.
The one where he says, not... Okay, what is it? It's something to do with not... Okay, so I think the end of it is, not everyone who has been molested molests, but everyone who molests has been molested, or something like that. No, that's not right. Those cancel each other out, don't they? What I just said. Anyway, he goes on to say this. And this ties into what you were saying earlier. So you know Sam Harris, some guy.
I think what you said actually makes sense.
Did it? What did I say?
You said not everyone that has been molested will molest.
Right.
But everyone that has molested has been molested.
Okay.
That actually makes sense.
Okay. It does. Yeah. For some reason, I thought it just canceled each other out, and I think that's right. But don't quote me on that because I can't find Peterson's quote. But so I had a thought. It was a good one too.
Does it have to do with reaping and sowing? I mean, we're talking about that every cause has an effect, punishment, and
Maybe it'll come back to me, but let's play with this for a second. Gosh, man, I had it and I lost it. But what I was trying to get, maybe I'll just talk and think. So we have. Oh, okay, here it is. So these laws that we're talking about, these immutable laws, they exist, and we live in a universe where we go by these laws. And when you don't know about these laws, you live your life, and your life is just, it seems like everything is kind of like by chance. And think about the person who just doesn't know information like this and they just live their life. They're operating pretty much on their physiological needs. You're essentially just a slave to your brain. You just go about and you're a slave to your environment and your brain, and you just live life. And that's where the law of relativity comes in, right? Just things happen to you, and things will happen to you that'll be different from things that happen to that person, and so we live our lives. We're taken away, and we're doing this stuff. We're living, and what interests me is that these laws, they exist, and if you were to pluck away, okay, here's a fun thing. If you and I were to exchange atom for atom, and we were to pick one at a time and switch and go back and keep exchanging, at what point, just like the thermometer exercise, at what point does hot become cold? At what point do you become me and I become you? So that's a fun thing to think about. Now, here's the thing. You can start plucking away at the earth, let's just say you pick an atom and it goes away, it disappears. And you do that with Earth, the planets, and then you do that with space. And so here's the question. Where do the immutable laws exist? Because when you think of Earth, when you're like kind of just like closed-minded, you think, Newtonian physics applies to Earth. All the stuff that happens with mass and things colliding, and just you think about Earth to use those laws. And then you have the immutable laws. Now, the immutable laws, you think, okay, well, do they exist on Mars? Whatever. But here's the thing. Once you start plucking away planets and start plucking things away, and you start plucking what the observable universe, do those laws still exist? If so, where is that space? Where? You tell me.
Well, I mean, I have an answer.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to hear these different educated people speak about such sophisticated concepts, and a lot of them, and I would say, well, I can't say the majority, but I would want to say the majority of them believe in a higher power, whether it's Jesus or not, or it's an energy source or a spirit. They all believe in something external. And
a lot of them call it source, don't they?
yeah, a source of life or the light or energy or spirit. And one of the most common like challenge, or I don't know, common sayings to defend God in a secular world is look at a piece of art and show me a piece of art that doesn't have a creator. So show me any piece of creation that does not have a creator. And so why would it be any different with the universe? Like you show me a painting, I'll show you an artist.
Yeah.
And so I look at that as God, Jesus, as being the one upholding these laws, these invisible laws, that he put them in place and that he sustains them. Yeah. And I mean, think about it like as the way I know God is he's outside of time. He's omnipresent. He's omniscient, like he's everywhere all the time in everything.
Yeah.
And that's that's mind blowing to me. That's why I resonate so much with this divine oneness, and you think about it like some people are just so attached to Mother Nature, right?
Yeah.
And
well, it's true though.
Yeah,
it's true. Like I have people very close to me who they're all about nature and that is it. It's like that is the God.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah. And it's funny because God said, I forget how he said it, but he's like at some point, or it's a shame when they start worshiping the creation and not the creator.
Yeah. See that is, man, that is so powerful because it's so true. Yeah. And that, man, yeah.
So
I can't even say what I feel about that.
Well, I think in that saying that God said that in the Bible, that's what we're talking about is we're admiring creation.
And that's where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, there's a creator.
I know.
And he's leagues above this.
And that's the thing, man. That is the dilemma, is that the belief in that is so outlandish that the idea that is true it seems so far out that you can't conceptualize that anymore. So you resort to have to believe in Mother Nature and science and the way the things work. Because man, it's so. First off, it's evidence, so you can see. It's what do they call it? It's empirical, and so but what happens is when that is your level of trust or faith, then that is as far as you can go. And so what then happens is scientists sit under a microscope and try to configure the reality and put their faith in the world and the material stuff, and it's limiting because it's not the end, it's not the all. So what else were you saying? Can you pull up that scripture where it says the worship the creator, the creation, not the creator?
I will. Hold on, let me see if this one So look, in Matthew 22:37, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." And I think there's another translation. I think there's another time. So he's quoting the commandments, the 10 Commandments. So I'm going to look up the commandments after this because there's this idea of, I think, 3 things versus 4 things, but I find it interesting. I mean, think about what we're talking about. And he says, love God with all your heart. Okay, so what is that? I mean, what does that even mean, right? Because he's not talking about your physical heart. With all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And so the reason I brought that up is because you had talked about earlier about plucking atoms, and you talked about, okay, you start plucking away at the universe, and where does it begin? Right. And I've always thought about this, like, and I've used this example for people. Okay, so think about who you are as a person, and if you lose your left arm, are you still you?
Right. Yes.
If you lose both your arms, are you still you?
Yeah. Let's identify with it.
What? No.
You're talking about like the law, because I could be a pianist and I lose my arms and I say I don't exist anymore. But well, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you
but
can't
yes,
say you don't exist. You just you find your identity in that. And
right,
you're
right.
crushed, but you're still you.
Right. No,
yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and so
I'm just saying there's people out there who do lose something. It doesn't necessarily have to be something of the body. It could be something of their life that they lose, and then they're crushed.
Yeah.
But
but there's still something in you, and the point of that is you're not physical.
Exactly.
You're not physical.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now you take that with the mental. Mm-hmm. Okay, so are you your brain, right? And then, what's your soul?
Right. Where's that sit?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you think about these aspects or parts that make up a body, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the way Bruce Lipton explains it is that he believes that there is like a spirit operating his physical body so that it can enjoy the physical. That's right. The physical around him. You know, he's like
eating chocolate.
Yeah. He's like, you know, how could I enjoy a chocolate bar if I was just a spirit hovering around?
Right.
And you know, some people think extraterrestrials, you know, are inhabiting our bodies or, you know, using them as robots or whatever. Yeah. You know, but the point is, you think about these people that have been, like, I don't know if they've been classified as brain dead or whatever, or in comas or whatever, and they come out of them, you know, and then they're normal or however you would explain that. And it's like, okay, so what is that? And I just think about it, and you hear these stories where people have out of body experiences, right? They die, they're pronounced dead. Right. They regain consciousness and they're alive again, and they write books and they say, well, you know what? I was actually hovering with Jesus, right, and I saw the whole situation, and it's like we are these spirits, you know. And another thing, while we're on the topic of it, it's like, when do we come in contact with our soul and our spirit at birth? You know, is it in conceptualization or in conception? Like, as soon as we're conceived, are we then given a soul, right, and a spirit, or is it when we're born? You know, that this thing takes over in our body.
That's interesting.
But it's just it's a really cool thought to at least wrestle with, you know, and to understand that we are more than these physical beings, and that we can be in touch with this power that is around us. Yeah. And Jesus spoke about it so often, man. You know, as you believed, it'd be done unto you. Yeah. You know, like
that's what I love. Now I know that God is extremely present in our lives. Prior, I used to think that maybe there was a God, but God sort of appeared, created everything, set the clock, and then kind of let it go. And during that process, we no longer have a connection. But I now know that God is present and is constantly present. And for me, there's no denying that. And it makes sense to me because we live in a organic world. We're not a program that is complete, that is finite. We're constantly present and organic, and God's very present in that process every single day, every minute. What else?
I mean, it's midnight, so
Is it?
yeah.
Well, praise God, man. There's nothing better than acknowledging, coming into the knowledge of, and then beginning to acknowledge the bigger source, God, the all creator, and letting that be the core of your life. Because otherwise, we're attaching ourselves to worldly things. And just like Tom said in the scripture, can you pull that up real quick, actually?
Yeah.
Are you trying to?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll pull that up because that is a beautiful scripture. And I think that, I mean, I don't know. I'm not God, so I don't know the hearts and minds of every person. I don't. But when I pull from my observation of the world around me, I do feel a sense that we're a little bit misguided. We're very, very programmed, and we are victims of all this stuff that is going on, like media, entertainment, all the pleasures that we have that distract us. And I mean, gosh, and the world seems to be getting faster and faster and faster. So, but anyway, do you have it?
Yeah, so to give you some context, I'll start a little bit before, but the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain for them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for the images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen.
Man, amen.
I mean, isn't that just spot on?
It's just like so powerful. It's not even funny. Yeah, that is like, it's so scary though. It's like, man, and this is the Bible. This is a piece of literature that was written 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, praise God, amen. Well, I guess any last words?
No, I mean, just challenge people to wrestle with these questions.
Yeah, and press in. That's the thing. You gotta seek and press in. And so, if you're pressing in, awesome. We're doing the platform for the sole purpose of connecting with the truth, with God, staying whole, being whole, knowing what it means, removing all unnecessary distractions in our life, or all distractions that take us away from what the truth is, why we're really here. And we're going to continue on next time, but That's it. Good night.
Good night.